This is the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Kendall of the notaballerina.com travel blog. Every episode, I'll share travel tales from several fellow travel lovers, and together we hope to entertain and inspire you, remind you of some of your own great travel experiences, and encourage you to hit the road again soon. Hello and welcome to episode 359 of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. This is the Van Life Diaries, part 4, Europe 1985, covering Germany, Belgium and the Netherlands. This is part of our super special monthly series. During 2025, these episodes are travelling us back in time to the most important trip of my life because, yes, it happened 40 years ago this year, way back in the 80s. During the Van Life Diaries Europe 1985 series, I'm reliving a 6-month budget motorhome trip my family took around Western Europe when I was just 9 years old. I have interviewed my dad to help me with this, and I'm lucky also to have my late mum's travel diaries from the time, plus our family photo albums and my own childhood memories. So as well as reliving memories of a life-changing trip, I also want to talk about how travel memories impact us, what's changed and what hasn't in the world of travel over these 4 decades, and also why taking your kids travelling is always a good idea. 2 things before we really dive in. I'd like to pay my respects to the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, where I'm recording this podcast, and I want to say a huge thanks to the sponsor of this series, Context Travel. They've been operating walking tours in cities around the world since 2003. They've been a certified B Corp since 2011, and they find incredibly interesting and qualified subject matter experts, very cool people, to take you on a special tour. More from Context Travel during the episode. Let's start this episode in Germany. Germany would become a recurring feature in my life. Even at this age, I was in year 5 of primary school on this trip. I had actually already started learning German in school a couple of years earlier. And I think if my first experience of Germany had been less good, perhaps my whole life course would have been entirely different. I ended up living there, married a German, have a now German ex-husband, but have a half German kid. So yeah, Germany's been pretty important. So funnily enough, back in 1985, my mum's first impressions of Germany were mixed, let's say. In her diary on our first day in Germany, she described it thus. On to Munich and on Autobahn, so did not stop. Country flat, large acreages. Saw farmers putting on fertiliser, liquid from barns. Most of the paddocks smell. On to a small village, pretty place. Blaubeuren. And camped outside fire station. Helpful people, one spoke English well and visited us after they had put up a tent for a beer festival. Spoke very well and proud of his country. Gave us advice on where to go. Would like East and West Germany to be friendly. It was interesting to hear him talk, but I was tired. Oops, sorry Munich for not stopping. I have been back since and it's definitely worth the stop. I have to say, when I read this in my mum's diary and I saw Blaubeuren, I thought, oh, surely that's not a town name. She's just got the German word for blueberries, Blaubeeren. But I have double-checked and Blaubeuren is indeed a small village just outside of Ulm and actually not really all that far from where I ended up living a couple of decades later, interestingly. Of course, this was still 4 years before the Berlin Wall fell. So it was interesting to hear that we had been discussing that concept of East and West Germany being friendlier. Apparently, though, my mum didn't know the name of this guy. Usually people are named in her diary, so perhaps he had a tricky one that she didn't remember. But we did, apparently, follow his suggested route for several days of our travels. Following our friend's planned route, big acreages, most farmers here in villages, lots of mercs on road. Lunch at Sigmaringen. Village market too, pretty place and visit to castle. Lovely old castle and beautifully maintained with furniture, etc. On to start of Black Forest around Tiddesee. Really cold. Lake here, small one and lots of tourist shops. Came into park and it hailed. And on the following day, this is mid-June by now, so you'd think we'd be going into summer, but I guess it is the German summer I came to know later in life. Had a walk in the Black Forest before going on to Freiburg. Forest interesting to drive through, and windy road through to Oberkerk, where we stayed in car park. Rained most of night. Farms pretty around hills on drive-in. And still in Germany, one of my favourite diary entries from my mum, purely because of the priority listing of one of her favourite vegetables. Shopped. Broccoli! First we have seen in Europe. On to Baden-Baden, where we lunched. Tourist town with baths and springs. Very touristy. Rode on towards Heidelberg near Rhine, not interesting, so crossed over to other side of Rhine and on to Heidelberg and camped at park on Neckar River. So although my mum always said that one of the reasons she wanted to take my sister and I on this trip at all is because she had this feeling that one day we would live in Europe and she wanted to know what it was like, I don't think she would have predicted back in 1985 that this spot on the Neckar River where we camped was a very short drive from where I would spend 3 years in my late 20s. Who knew? Besides, she was also more interested in the broccoli, very on brand of her. It actually warranted a couple of exclamation marks, and they are infrequent in her diary. My dad and I, of course, discussed our memories of Germany while looking at our photos, which included several typical Fachwerk houses. If you listened to our chat on Switzerland last episode, you also might remember we were constantly in the snow wearing only shorts and T-shirts. So we mentioned how we've improved on this. And then we started in Germany, which became much more important to me later when I lived there for a few years. So
Indeed.
This is my first experience.
Well, I noticed from this photograph that we're all rugged up here.
We have learned how to wear clothes. Now, I don't remember going to Heidelberg as a kid, but I then lived right nearby.
You're familiar with it now.
I'm very familiar with it now. But I do vaguely remember Mum had her hair cut there. I don't know why, but maybe she told me when I moved there that that's what she remembered about it. So, but I assume she cut your hair in the grounds of caravan parks the way she cut our hair.
Oh, I'm sure that. Yes, I certainly wouldn't have been wandering around looking for a barber.
No, exactly.
Overseas.
No, that's right.
must have been.
Yeah, I remember that she would cut my hair and Zoe's hair just sitting out in the grass somewhere in a caravan park. I don't know if that was weird or normal for other campervanners or...
It was normal for us, apparently. Yeah.
Apparently. Still looks, I feel like Germany still looks the same no matter what.
With those timber planks on the outside, yes.
Mm.
I've never got accustomed to that in any way. I've never understood it. Why is it? Is it just a question of covering in joins? Because it is a bit haphazard, but apparently there's a panel. There's a process.
It's very distinctive. I love that snippet of caravan park life, getting our hair cut, sitting on the lawn outside the van. We had some pictures of that. Funnily enough, my mum also reported on her Heidelberg haircut, including a perm. Remembering, of course, getting a perm was very common back in the 80s. Into town and had hair permed. Very little English spoken. Very jazzy salon. Willy Wolf. Deutschmark 83.50. Walked through Old Town, really lovely. Girls enjoyed monkey on building blowing bubbles. Back for an early park and a shower, always best in afternoon as not many people about and showers cleaner. By this stage, I guess we were becoming pretty expert at caravan park life. From here, we actually had one of those really cool staying with friends experiences, catching up with a bank colleague of my dad's who was working for the bank in Germany, based near Frankfurt. With kids similar age to us. His name was Trevor McDonald, and he also helped us to cash a cheque. Honestly, getting money back then, obviously, it was just such a huge hassle compared to these days. That's one thing I'm not sorry has changed. Did you know him before, or he was just
No, I knew him from Perth.
Oh, they were all from Perth?
Yeah, well, no, he was from Sydney, but he had worked in Perth.
Uh-huh.
And went back to Sydney, and then they grabbed him to go to Germany.
Wow, that's so cool. Why didn't they grab us to go to Germany?
It wasn't my field.
Well, I do remember this and going, we were there for one of the kids' birthday parties. Yeah, as a kid, these are the things I remember. I remember the birthday party and I remember the flying fox. So.
I think we must have gone to that park a couple of times.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Because we really liked it.
Yeah.
Did we stay there a few days, do you think?
Yes, we parked the van over there in the front yard. As I recall, it was quite a big house.
Yeah.
But we stayed in the van. It worked out well for us. Gave us a chance to have a look around and go to the park a couple of times.
Yes, exactly. Nice to have a little longer stint somewhere. So, yeah, we actually stayed several nights here and even got invited to their daughter Pamela's 7th birthday party, which was such a nice dose of normality for us. Now, my mum's perspective on our stay here is also interesting. I love to see the things that she noticed. Trevor, very helpful, organised money and invited us for the evening, so out to their place at Kronberg. Interesting home with boiler room, and Marilyn and Trevor very pleasant. Good evening. Marilyn out to a dinner with the American Association, so I cooked dinner. Next day, little tired, bathed and showered, coffee with Marilyn. Shopped and looked at Schloss Hotel in Kronberg. Was castle and lovely. Back for party and out evening for pizza. Walk and on way home through park where kids all played on Flying Fox, all tired. Today, 12 weeks away, halfway. Said goodbye to McDonald's. Pleasant break. We had enjoyed ourselves. We continued westward from here and on to Belgium, but we will return to Germany at the end of this episode as we wind our way up towards Scandinavia, so Germany is not quite over yet. Context Travel offers walking tours in all the countries we're chatting about today, including in Brussels, Amsterdam, Munich and Berlin, one of my favourite cities of all. Obviously, back in 1985, it was a bit trickier to cross the Iron Curtain, but I did by chance get to be in Berlin for reunification in 1990. As a teenager on that school trip, my host father in Berlin was a teacher in Kreuzberg and I got to meet some of his students. Back then, that included a lot of Turkish immigrants. So today, Context actually offers a tour of this neighbourhood, and it sounds like it's still a real melting pot and a really fascinating place to wander. And plus, it's actually my favourite kind of walking tour. You won't see major sites, but you'll get really interesting local insights instead. So if Berlin is on your travel list, explore with Context on a Nazi history tour with a historian, a Berlin contemporary art tour with a local art historian or curator, or take my recommended Kreuzberg hipster neighbourhood tour. And don't forget, you can get a 15% discount on any Context Travel tour using the code ThoughtfulTravel at contexttravel.com. So, on to Belgium. Now, I'm sorry in advance to any Belgian listeners, and of course, as luck would have it, literally just yesterday, knowing I was going to record this today, I started teaching my new semester here, and I have 2 Belgian study abroad students in my class, so sincere apologies to you. We spent only one night in Belgium and didn't see much at all. My mum reports it thus. Late start and on to Belgium. Country similar to before Rhine, crops, etc. Into Belgium for lunch, more. Most we have seen, cows in paddocks and fences, pleasant country, few hills and more trees. Hard to find anywhere to camp, free or campsite. Town's quite busy and roads also. Not much for tourists. We'll go on to Holland. And to add insult to injury, there is literally just one photo in our huge photo album from Belgium, which my dad and I discuss. So in our album here, there's one picture of Belgium, but you seem to remember more.
Well, I do remember that I was impressed by the amount of fruit that was around Belgium, but I can't remember where in Belgium. But I do have an impression that there was plenty of fruit.
It's funny because I always think of Belgium as responsible for chocolate, so not fruit. I'm glad to hear it. Sorry, Belgium. I have returned briefly as an adult, but actually I need to go again. I really sincerely love Belgian chocolate, so that's a good enough reason to go and find out more about what I can love about Belgium. Anyway, from here we continued north into the Netherlands, and my mum describes our first days there. On to Delta Barrier, very flat countryside, lots of crop and beet. Millions of bikes around. On way, bridge opened up to allow boats through. Toured Delta project by bus, interesting. Delta Barrier built to stop Holland being flooded, can understand as it is really so flat. On to Gouda to be there for cheese market. Camped in car park, bit noisy in centre of town. And the next day, up early in anticipation of cheese market. Tourist Bureau very well organised and helpful. But unfortunately, Gouda Cheese Market starts next week, later this year. Interesting town, church, etc. which we visited. Canals and houseboats, lots of cheese and clog shops. So it seems like we did see all of the stereotypes in the Netherlands, and you'll be glad to learn we did manage to move on to see a cheese market in the town of Alkmaar, and that's where we went to the next day, and we've got lots of photos of it, which my dad and I chatted about.
Oh, I remember the cheese rolling business. That funny act that was carried on. It was all interesting and historical sort of stuff.
So was it kind of like, was it real in any way, or was it mostly a tourist performance?
Oh, it was a tourist performance, definitely
Right.
a tourist performance. But it was a replica of what used to happen in times past. That was good. It was quite interesting.
There's a lot of cheese there.
Yeah, and I think they use the same rolls of cheese time and time again because they rolled it around in the street.
That's true. Yeah. No one wants to eat that after, do they?
I certainly would.
My dad's sharp memory also recognised another caravan park here as a location for our public haircuts.
I remember also having haircuts at the caravan park we were staying, myself included. And is that a glass of wine that's on the grass there? No, I don't think so.
I don't think. Oh, hard to know.
Hard to tell.
It could be, but I hope not. If Mum's drinking wine and then cutting our hair, I don't want to be the third in line, or you get crooked hair.
No, I don't think so.
No, I don't know what it is.
That was a problem.
No, she was a good hair cutter.
Yeah.
For that circumstance. Anyway, after our cheesy experiences, we moved on to Amsterdam, a city I have returned to several times since and really, really enjoyed. But it seems that back in 1985, we found it a bit so-so. My mum reported on it this way. Into Amsterdam on tram. Zoe happy. All got wet, but fortunately rain eased for a few hours. Trip on canals interesting. Very soupy. Buildings all narrow in width, as taxes are paid on width. All about 4 stories. One house only 40 inches width frontage. Most buildings old. Amsterdam very cosmopolitan. Lots of young people, some weird in dress. Drug problem here. Shops not as interesting as I had hoped, bit touristy. So yeah, my mum had a lot of opinions about Amsterdam and, probably back then some of them were not exactly wrong. Anyway, we then continued on driving back across the Netherlands towards Germany.
My other impression was how flat it really was. All around the place, so flat.
Yeah, because I kind of think it's flat here, but that was a whole other level, wasn't it?
Well, you could see for miles, and there was traffic going each different way, paddock after paddock. And there are these cars going backwards and forwards, and you could see them from miles away. It was incredible. Really was.
It really is a very flat place. So finally, before we headed on north to Scandinavia, we crossed back into Germany and made a beeline for Hamburg. By that stage, we actually did have a good family friend who was from Hamburg, so it was of extra interest to us. But these are the things my parents recalled, starting with my mum. Into Hamburg. Looked at Lake Ulster. Lovely. White swans on lake. Had lunch. Vegetarian. Overlooking Rathaus and lake. Lots of people and shopping. Cleaner town than some. Nice feel. Sun shone some of the day, but still cool. On to Denmark tomorrow after washing. And on brand for my dad, we found a photograph of fish in a fish shop in our Hamburg collection. It's definitely not the first or last fish picture in our albums. We moved back into Germany briefly to Hamburg.
Hamburg, yes. I remember taking that photograph of the fish. It was so expensive too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, really expensive.
As I was putting this episode together, it struck me quite vividly that whether it was from the memories at the time, like my mum's diary and my dad's photos, or our memories 40 years later, heaps of them are just based around the people we spent time with and the everyday things we did and saw, the haircuts, the fish, and a lot less about the particular tourist attractions we visited. And they were interesting too, but seeing the food in a supermarket in Germany or the Netherlands, or chatting with people in caravan parks, just living in different places, that's really what was memorable and of interest even then. So I guess it's no surprise that later on I would start to think about how to be a thoughtful traveller rather than a box-ticking, sightseeing-focused kind of traveller. Next month, we're moving on to Scandinavia, a part of Europe I still really love, so it'll be interesting to revisit what it was like back in 1985. So thank you again to Context Travel, the series sponsor, for their support in creating these special podcast episodes. You can find out more about their tours at contexttravel.com or Find them under Context Travel on your social media platform of choice. And remember to use the code ThoughtfulTravel for a 15% discount if you book online. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening to episode 359. A big thanks to my dad for sitting down with me to chat about our long ago trip. As always, I'll include a bunch of our photos, or my dad's photos particularly, in the show notes. You can find them for this episode at notaballerina.com/359. And I'll also leave links in the show notes to our Facebook and LinkedIn groups for thoughtful travellers. And to Substack, you can read more about what I'm up to at thoughtfultravel.substack.com. As always, thank you so much for listening. This has been another episode of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Show notes and other information are at notaballerina.com/podcast. Join me again soon for another chat about why we travel. Bye for now.